Okay, Alex, thank you very much for that interesting speech.
Yes.
I mean, interesting in retrospect, because of course, the interpreters were always wise after the event.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking that the subject itself is not particularly hideous.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's we're familiar with it. I mean, I use Uber, so I'm pretty familiar with it. So the challenges were slightly elsewhere, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the idea of the speech, because I can say it now because this was used or I made the speech for an accreditation test a short while ago. So the idea is not to make it super difficult. The idea rather is to see if candidates can interpret quite simply. So,
yeah.
And for that, the idea is not to make it super difficult, but rather to put in a few sort of challenges and see how candidates cope with that. So, and in this case, the topic was rather straightforward, as you said.
Yeah.
Either you've used Drupal before, you've read about it in the news. So I put in some figures and see if people could cope with that, and also try to use a few typical German phrases that we would use in a context like this.
Yes, I remember you using one or two of those. I can't remember if I actually reproduced them.
They're not in my notes either, so I couldn't tell you. We'd have to compare the recordings, yeah.
The one curious one, which, before I forget, the Hamsterrad. The idea is going around in a circle, basically. It's getting nowhere, is it?
It's also a bit of a grind, so very difficult. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the idea I was trying to get across for the drivers, yeah.
Yeah. For me personally, the challenge, I mean, consecutive is something you've got to do pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So I suppose for me personally, the challenge, assuming that I've got the main ideas and it's not difficult to get them, it's difficult. It's kind of speech where it's very difficult to do anything close to a contresens because most of the candidates for tests will be young people and will be familiar with this. So it's a question of getting them in the right order, the arguments, and I suppose a lot of the detail.
And I think also, I think the opinion of the speaker. So I tried to bring across that this was, a fairly subjective speech, maybe because this is my appreciation of the whole situation, which not everybody may agree with, but I think that's one thing that you should get across in the speech as well, is that this is the speaker sharing their opinion.
For me, that was in fact one of the challenges, because in the heat of the moment when you're trying to get everything down, remembering the points which were a personal comment from you as opposed to the points which weren't, was something I found a bit difficult afterwards, probably because my note-taking was suboptimal, as I put it myself in the speech, and therefore I hadn't noted as accurately as I would have liked to. Where did the speaker say, I think this, I think that? So I did add it on a couple of occasions, but I couldn't swear that I put them in at the right place.
Yeah. I mean, my note-taking isn't very good. I mean, it works for me most of the time, at least. Yeah. But I think the technique that is recommended often in this case is to have a small column on the left of the notepad and just indicate there. You could, for example, I usually use an I for I think, or W for we think, or you could, if it's about the commission, I just put COM, that kind of thing, and you could use that left column to note that down, especially for speeches where that's really important.
I suppose it's never too late to adapt your note-taking technique.
But
even after many years of working,
Yeah.
It's because what I tend to find is that with note-taking, you begin on a good note, as it were.
Yeah.
And as things hot up and get faster, your note-taking tends to fall to pieces in a way. That's what I find.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you one thing about the Uber's number of trips in 2018.
Yes.
Did that indeed apply to the US alone, or was it worldwide?
That was US alone.
Okay.
At least it says so in my notes. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
I think most of all the figures applied to 2018, and the number of rides was US only. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think because from doing consecutives, basically, as everybody knows, it's a combination of notes and memory. You remember what the speaker said. The note jogs your memory. Says, yes, he put this in here, and quite often you can fill in a little bit. Without having taken the note, because you just remember what the speaker said at a particular point. For example, I have two little exclamation marks at the end of this second page, and basically I remember that when Alex spoke of 4.3 billion trips, he then said something like, I can't remember exactly what he says. That's incredible or crazy. It's
stunning figures.
Stunning figures,
like that,
basically. So that was enough for me to more or less get the idea of shock, horror, astonishment, whatever.
That's interesting because you use the exclamation points there. I have two sort of squiggly eyes that are open wide.
Okay. Well,
because I note down my speeches in CONSEC notes as well, so I try to sort of keep them short and sweet.
Yeah. But that was just one example. But for me, over 5 or 6 minutes, the challenge is, and this is something that you can only acquire with a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Constant practice. And the challenge is getting that combination of notes and your memory, and that will improve with practice, as far as I'm concerned. And And in the other direction, it will disimprove without practice.
Yeah,
You
that's a
simply
nice
get
word,
rusty,
yeah.
basically. You get
And I
rusty.
think what I also find sometimes is if you do sort of, because we spoke about this earlier, we often do very short bits of consecutive here. So if you do a longer speech, sometimes you sort of get into note-taking debt. You know, you're sort of struggling to keep up, and then at some point you'll just have to leave something out
Yes.
to keep up because you can only have that much décalage in consecutive. I think otherwise you'll just
No, you were
break stuff.
quite gnady with your conclusion. I mean, luckily the conclusion wasn't anything terribly.
Yeah, no, it's usually
difficult,
just something
which is good, because sometimes you can get a conclusion. Sometimes you get a conclusion which is a little something really tricky, like
Out of left field,
a figure of speech or something. Yeah, something totally unexpected, and it can be difficult to note it down or even to remember it. You know, so at least that was okay. But generally, yeah, I thought it was a nice speech, and.
Yeah, because that's what they always say, right? You should get the beginning right and the end, and then the thing in between, sort of
as much as you can of
in
between.
get across as much as you can.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there are any other questions I had specifically, but is there any little nuance which you feel that I could have improved on or left out? And please
No, I
feel free
think
to let me know. You know?
I think it was fine, and we'll leave it up to viewers to compare the two speeches and sort of make up their own mind. No, but I think it was actually a very good rendition.
Okay.
Right there, and you certainly got the argument across is that it's not all rosy, but instead there are quite a few sort of negative points to using the ride-sharing services.
Well, what I would have done, I mean, if I'd had the luxury of, you know, in a test situation you don't have much time, but if you had the luxury of knowing the topic a little bit in advance, you develop a couple of little ad hoc symbols, if you like.
Yeah, almost like a
for that
vocabulary
speech.
or a glossary.
Because even if you have an ad hoc symbol for something that's quite long, that'll save you, it might only save you half a second each time it comes through, but that can be crucial in allowing you to listen more and spend less time writing. An ad hoc symbol which is just for that speech only, I mean, you don't really need it here because, Uber and Lyft, okay, they're short words.
I mean, you could have something for driver or rider or, But,
Exactly, yeah.
Apart from that, it wasn't that complicated, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well.
So we'll leave it up
That's
to
it,
you
yeah.
to practice on your own. Have fun.